From 7 News, this is a Call 7 Investigators special presentation.
This is Colorado's morning news on a Wednesday. Starting to get just a little bit cooler, low to mid-50s for overnight lows.
There's some questions as to why they selected Denver, why they were in Colorado.
This is a live operator. You know, this is a guy who was getting ready to do something really bad.
He was just an average person. He was very much like anyone else you'd talk to in the street.
I'm not sure that people understand really just how close this guy was to being successful, to carrying out a successful terrorist attack within the United States.
He's the type of guy you can underestimate.
Everyone should know that Al-Qaeda and its components are here in the United States. They blend in.
And once he hits I-70, he takes off at a very high rate of speed. We have no idea where he's going.
What could he be doing? Where is he going? What is the plan here?
You didn't know?
Didn't know.
We now know much more about that morning in September 2009 when a Colorado man climbed into a rented Chevy Impala for a cross-country trip to launch a plan to kill Americans. During the next half hour, the Call 7 investigators will present an in-depth look inside the most significant terrorist plot in the United States since 9/11. Today, Najibullah Zazi sits in a federal prison in Brooklyn. He's admitted to plotting a major attack on the New York City subway system. He now awaits his sentencing. It's also important to understand and to stress here, it's extremely rare for active FBI agents to publicly discuss their work, their personal observations, and the challenge of taking down the Colorado terrorist.
We were growing more and more confident that we had an operational cell.
Jim Davis is the special agent in charge of Denver's FBI.
We had a guy who was getting ready to commit a terrorist act, and we knew that he had the wherewithal and the ability to do it, and it was a question of trying to figure out what his plan was, what's his target.
And this was the real deal, and it was the potential consequences would have been devastating had he succeeded.
Steve Olson is an assistant special agent in charge. He's directly responsible for national security in Denver.
If we change one scenario, one fact in this whole fact line, he would have succeeded. And it was that close.
Weeks before the story became public, intelligence sources from overseas had identified Najibullah Zazi, igniting the FBI's investigation.
In the early stages of this investigation, the thing that kept us awake at night was, do we know who all the players are? Are we confident that we understand what the plot is? Are we confident that we know what they were going to do, what the timeline is, where they were getting their resources?
And you didn't?
We didn't. Initially, we didn't.
For days, FBI surveillance teams kept a close eye on this Aurora apartment, expecting to learn more about Najibullah Zazi, his intentions, his targets, and who was helping him. The surveillance team was not expecting a road trip. When he left the apartment that day, you had no idea he was going to New York.
The night before, Najibullah goes and rents a car, which was curious to us because he was a participant in a shuttle business. They had cars, yet he goes and rents a car.
This is a terrorist, and he's acting a little irrationally. He's driving on the expressway at speeds over 100 miles an hour. What is going on here? We were able actually to reach out to the Colorado State Patrol and tell them that he was driving at a high rate of speed and ask them if they could stop him.
It was certainly a good day. It's something that I'm proud that I was able to help out with.
Corporal Chris Lamb spotted Zazi's car on I-70 just outside of Lyman.
When we activated the overhead lights, he immediately took the shoulder. He seemed that he was bothered by the fact that I had stopped him, that I'd pulled him over and contacted him. So there's definitely more nervousness there than usual. Asked him where he was headed to, and he advised me he was headed to New York.
And it's out of that car stop that we learned through statements that Najibullah Zazi made to the trooper that he was headed to New York. That was the first time that New York came into this investigation.
Zazi covered 1,100 miles that day. Unbeknownst to him, so did the FBI. He slept just a few hours at a rest stop on I-70 outside of Columbus, Ohio.
And here we are approaching the anniversary of September 11th. We know that he's planning on doing something bad. Why is he going to New York? We scramble resources. We watch him uninterrupted from his apartment in Denver, Colorado to downtown New York. Are there co-conspirators in New York? We didn't know. But the fact that he was going to New York certainly piqued our interest.
I didn't know if he was going to New York to be operational. I didn't know if he was fleeing to New York to be away from the scene of an attack. We just didn't know.
On September 10th, 2009, you believed there was a chance Najibullah Zazi's target was right here in Colorado.
Yeah, I believe that there was a chance that his target was here. On my calendar that evening was an event that I was going to attend at the Sept Museum, which is a counterterrorism museum. That evening, the Pakistani ambassador to the U.S. was going to speak. It kind of pops into my head. We've got, the Counterterrorism Museum, Pakistani ambassador giving a speech about terrorism on September 10th.
It was logical to conclude that Denver was going to be the subject of an attack.
With the Sept Museum in the heart of Denver, the FBI notified Mayor John Hickenlooper, the police department, and Governor Bill Ritter. Governor Ritter offered his personal security detail to protect the Pakistani ambassador.
We were able to marshal some resources so that we made sure that we had a good law enforcement presence at that event. It turned out that wasn't the target.
You've got all hands on deck, you have all this intelligence, but you still didn't know where the target was for his potential attack.
Right.
Frustrating?
Very frustrating.
Scary.
It is. It is. And virtually unacceptable. I mean, that is kind of the important part. At a certain point, you've got to say, look, we can't afford to let this play out anymore.
While in New York, Najibullah Zazi learned the FBI was watching him. Soon, the whole world would be watching. On September 14th last year, Najibullah Zazi's plans to attack New York City were unraveling before his eyes and on television sets across the country. 2 days before, knowing he'd been made, Zazi fled New York on a plane bound for Denver. He landed in the national spotlights.
And we begin this afternoon with breaking news in the FBI terror investigation of a possible terrorist cell here in Denver.
There was certainly a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attention. The light shining on Denver was very bright in those days.
The news crews were set up outside his home. They were talking to him. They had cameras in his face as he's leaving his house, trying to get in his car. He couldn't do his job.
Journalists from around the world descended on Colorado, giving Zazi a chance to tell his story. His statements were short.
I have nothing to do with Al-Qaeda and any link or anything with Al-Qaeda.
His newly hired attorney, Arthur Folsom, was painting the picture of an innocent man caught up in a rogue FBI investigation.
Why is it they haven't served a search warrant? Why is it they haven't shown up to ask him any questions?
It wasn't critical that we arrest him right away. We could play this thing out a little further, see what other evidence we could get, see if we could identify other subjects in this thing. So really it was not in our plan to arrest him when he came back to Colorado.
I mean, each night I went home knowing that this guy was essentially 10 minutes from where I lived. So you can imagine it's having that knowledge, knowing that you've got somebody who's a problem, but not being able to lock them up yet, creates a lot of anxiety.
Supervisory Special Agent John Scatta understands the work of terrorists firsthand.
I served in our New York office as a field agent. I was there on 9/11, and to me, terrorism is a very serious and personal thing.
For Scatta, his job on the Zazi investigation was clear: get his agents anything they needed to to build a solid case.
We had surveillance going around the clock, trying to keep an eye on this individual.
Also keeping an eye on Zazi were these surveillance cameras inside an Aurora beauty supply warehouse. The cameras captured him buying large quantities of hydrogen peroxide-based beauty supplies. The chemicals can be used as one component of a crude but powerful bomb.
That's great evidence because it shows he's buying the precursor chemicals that he needs. We were quite fortunate that the cameras were working because there's many locations where they have cameras that they don't change the film, it doesn't work right. So for us to be able to get that type of evidence, I mean, it definitely bolstered the indictment.
What do you believe Najibullah Zazi was trying to accomplish?
There is no question in my mind that what he was trying to do was build explosive devices, put them in backpacks, get on the subway in New York City, and detonate those explosive devices. I am absolutely convinced that that was his plot, that was his plan. He was going to send a message.
Those early nights on his porch, Zazi told the media, "I'm innocent." Right. Did you watch that?
I saw it. I saw it.
What'd you think?
Well, I knew better. I knew better.
From the moment his name became public, journalists from Colorado and around the country were following Zazi's every move, digging into his past, talking to his family, his employer, and his neighbors. The overwhelming attention led Zazi to make a bold decision.
You know, one of the great breaks in this case was Zazi's desire to try and talk his way out of this. Zazi felt like he could talk to us and make this all go away.
When you heard he and his attorney were going to come down and talk with you, surprised?
No question about it. Surprise is probably an understatement.
And I think that the thing that motivated him to come in and talk to us was, in part anyway, all the media attention that he was getting.
I honestly believe that he thought he could talk his way out of this. He could convince us that he was just like you and me.
Did you ever think Najibullah Zazi would walk into your office and talk for 20+ hours?
No, I didn't.
He came in here initially thinking he could explain this away and that we would just forget about him based upon what it is that he explained to us. Obviously, that was unsuccessful.
When Zazi and his attorney showed up at FBI headquarters on the morning of September 16th, the man assigned to do the talking or the listening was Special Agent Eric Jurgensen.
He trusted me fairly quickly, and I definitely utilized that to my advantage. He came in to me wanting to clear his name.
And as Jurgensen listened to Zazi's story in downtown Denver, 20 miles away in Aurora,
the thought was that a perfect time to serve the search warrant was when we knew where Najibullah Zazi was. He's in an interview talking to FBI agents. He no longer has his cell phone in his possession.
The downtown interview and the search of Zazi's Aurora apartment happened simultaneously.
We sent our bomb technicians in first, our special agent bomb techs, to clear the apartment complex. As part of the search warrant, we find a container in there. I have a conversation with one of the members of Najibullah Zazi's family, and I ask him, what's in there? And to the best of my recollection, he says, I don't know, but you had better test it. Well, that doesn't give me a warm and fuzzy feeling.
Agents in Aurora feared a possible explosion and began evacuations.
No sooner do I give the order to evacuate than I hear the school bell ring. And now we've got a whole bunch of elementary school kids walking down the street right behind Najibullah Zazi's apartment complex.
Ultimately, the material inside that container in Zazi's apartment was not explosive, but the story he was telling at FBI headquarters certainly was.